All right. What's up, Dalton? How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Feeling pretty good.
Doing pretty good.
Lacking a
Awesome.
little sleep, but we'll be all right.
Like always. Um,
Like always.
yeah, so the topic of today's podcast or discussion, whatever, I don't know, just having fun with these, but was sparked by a lecture that I had listened to by Alan Watts literally yesterday. So I brought it up to Dalton and he was like, I actually have done some lessons in church on it and studied a little bit, but the topic is on values and um, it say if you were asked what are your top 10 values or your 10 values, could you give a list? And I sat there and I was thinking about it. And I was like really sure at first. So this will be kind of an interesting discussion and maybe hopefully question to ask yourself. You know, what are my values? What at my core drives most of my decisions? Um, Other than sometimes being from a place of fear or whatever. But yeah, so I'm gonna hand it over to you, man. If you want to start off with whatever you got some notes and stuff. So
Yeah, man, I think first is you define the word value, and the word value goes along with the word worth, what exactly um is the worth of it. What all makes up value. And the Webster says worth that property or those properties of a thing which render it useful or estimable, or the degree of that property or of such properties. The real value of a thing is its utility, its power or capacity of procuring or producing a good, is the Webster's definition for the word value. And so, in a sense, you can look at each and every one of us and you can say we have value, but we also have the potential to become more valuable. Value is definitely a spectrum, and worth is definitely a spectrum. You can increase your value and you can increase your worth, and you can also decrease it in a lot of different areas. But we need to always know that regardless how much we've screwed up or how much we've, maybe done things that weren't the right way, or we've messed up our character or our reputation, that we always have value. So never think for even a moment that you're not valuable. So I figured we'd kind of kick it off with that. What's your definition of value? Do you have something that you kind of have gone off of?
I mean, for me, it's just the I mean, kind of the contextual word value. I mean, we place value and stuff. But no, I don't really have a definition I go by. So yeah,
Well, value can mean, value can change based on who you're talking to, um, if you're talking about, certain types of art can be more valuable to some people than others.
right,
Depends on how you look at it and how much you admire it or love it. Definitely can change the value. And that definitely changes with us too on a personal level, is the world that we live in and what the world needs. If you are offering something that the world doesn't need, your value is going to be very low. If you're offering something that the world does need, then it's going to be high. And
right,
and so there's all kinds of different aspects that throw in. You can use the word want too. If you're something the world wants, then your value is going to be high. If you're not something the world wants, it's going to be low. Um, and and so you build your value throughout your life. You build your worth throughout your life. Um, how
right.
This is probably a good question to ask, and then whoever's watching this, you guys can, well, Isaac answers that you guys can think about what your answer is how do you value yourself?
Well, I do want to mention that, like, as far as values go, what you were talking about, values in the world, um, not personal values, more like just actual worth in general, or um, yeah. So my experience has been more so focused in the business side of things, where when you're selling things, you you want to have a good grasp on their value, and the better you get at what you're selling, the more value you can offer, the more benefits, and that way you can increase your price, stuff like that. So doing a service business for the last couple of years, I got to experience a lot of like that level of a value exchange, I guess, in the marketplace. As you get better at things, you can definitely you become more valuable, and I guess that's more of a real life experience with it, and it's been in business for me. Um, how I define my worth, man, I'm working on that, dude. How I see myself and a value side of things. Growing up, you're always taught to be humble. Um, and don't think too much of yourself, and I think that's definitely at least a bit different in a lot of different households. Growing up in a religious household, though, I don't know if we really sat down to think about the word humble and very much, because yeah, but like the meaning behind it. So you grow up thinking that, oh, you need to be humble, when in reality, I think it actually just degrades your sense of self-worth if you're not looking at that word the right way. So I'm still working on that, man. That's a personal journey for me. So that's why I think it really, whenever I listened to this lecture, I was like, okay, I need to explore this a little bit more, because one of the things that he mentioned in the speech was, it's like if you got a job offer, and if you got a job offer to move to a different state, move your family, your kids, and all that, your decision is going to be based on your personal values. Um, so defining what you find valuable will determine how you make your decision to move to a different state, to take that job. Is it money, adventure, such? Kind of a roundabout answer. I kind of
Nice.
rambled for sure, but
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
it's just what was going through my head when you were talking.
Yeah, I like that because, what you value will determine why you take that step to move out of a country, move out of a state to go to another state to take a job. I think that dives into an even deeper question of what sum of things makes up your value. What are you basing it off of? Are you basing it off of a better form of life? My values are, to give the best possible life to me and my kids and my family. So I'm going to take this job in this state that will be able to provide for them better. And, it's like, you kind of have to ask yourself also, why is that a value of mine? Why do I have these values? Where do they come from? And maybe sometimes we need to get rid of some of the things that we value so that we can move forward. Maybe some of our values are holding us back. What we put so much
I'm kind of curious.
importance on.
You asked me how I look at valuing myself. I kind of want to ask you the same question.
So I was thinking of the word humble, and I had the same experience growing up. We both kind of grew up in the same atmosphere, um, where humble a lot of times meant you were supposed to devalue yourself. Humble doesn't necessarily, and you were just saying, you have to use it in the right context. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to devalue yourself, but it does mean to lower yourself while at the same time lifting someone else up. And most of the time, that other person that we lift up is God, and so we put Him first. There's an old hymn that you've probably heard. His eye is on the sparrow, and when you think about a sparrow, it's like probably don't pay too much attention to the sparrow, but the Bible says that God is attentive on the sparrow. He knows what the sparrow is doing. And so then He also says that He knows what we're doing and that He loves us. He doesn't even really say much about the sparrow, that He loves the sparrow or this or that, but to us, He says that He loves us. And so when you put that emphasis on it, He gives you value. And so for me in my life, a big thing that gives me value is God. And I think one of the ways that Jordan Peterson put it was, what is God in your life? Not necessarily, it doesn't have, your God doesn't necessarily have to be the God of the Bible. You can have a different God, and that God is going to determine what you value. And so what you put at the highest peak in your life. And so if the highest, and a lot of times, I think normally in people's lives, they put joy or fulfillment, life fulfillment at the top. And that's kind of their base, what they go off of, what's going to be the most fulfilling, what's going to be brings the most happiness, what brings the most of this. And that's what they're going to base their decisions off of, because that's what they value.
Right.
So, but that's where I get a lot of my value. And then just in general life and in the business area, I always try to learn a new skill. I think being a jack of all trades is a lot better than being a professional at only one thing. No doubt, perfecting an art is beautiful, and some of the greatest things that we've had come out of perfecting an art. But also, you have to have jacks of all trades too, because literally, we were founded on jacks of all trades. We had to know how to do a lot of different things to be able to, come as far as we have. And so,
yeah.
But so I put that on my self-worth and value is, what am I capable of? And based off what I am capable of also determines my value. And then, going through life, you have to put your foot down when someone offers you something less of than what you're worth. And so, but
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, crystal clear
for me.
I definitely can relate to that reason, the more skill-based value side of things. I'm always trying to learn, always trying to develop my mind, just build myself and reframe a lot of those limiting beliefs that I've developed over the years. But I think it would be a cool podcast, by the way, to do something on the word humility, because in my experience growing up, though, or at least recently, it's been that humility is more of understanding that knowing your value, but understanding that you can always be better, and there's always someone that knows something that you don't, so be open to learning from them, has been my experience recently with the word humility. And obviously I'm sure there's a different definition for it, but that really flipped the script for me, was knowing that it's not degrading, knowing your value, but knowing you could be more. So be humble in your your demeanor when you're learning from someone, rather than I know everything.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you look at it as well?
Yep. And that's what it is. It's humbleness is going through life realizing that you may not be right, and that's the best kind of way to look at it. The most simplest way without getting too complicated is, it might not be right. And being willing to accept it when you're not right is the second part of humility. So
I like that. Yeah, you summed that up very well. Me over here just rambling, summed it up.
You're all good, man. Hey, you were doing that. I know a few episodes ago, it took me like 5 minutes to say something, and then you said a quote, and it was like, oh, that said it all. So, yeah. It's like, well, that was really cool. But yeah, I mean, we can look at value in a lot of different ways. One thing is like what determines value. I think is where a lot of people get caught up on this word is, like I saw an illustration with a dollar bill. The guy takes a dollar bill and he wads it up and he's like, is it still worth $1? It's like, yeah. It's like, okay, now we're going to throw it in the toilet and pick it up out of the toilet, dry it off. Is it still worth $1? Yeah, it's still worth $1. Now, if you told people that it was tossed in the toilet, maybe they wouldn't want it. But, it's still worth $1. Its worth is still $1. You can take it to the bank and you can get a clean dollar for that dollar if you wanted to. They have to accept it. It always has a worth. So regardless what you do to the dollar bill, it always has value and it always has worth. So just remember that, going through life, regardless what you have, there's an old saying, another man's junk is another man's treasures. What you may not value anymore, somebody else may be at a different level or different stage and, grab onto it and go, nope, but I can use this. Anyways, what were some of your notes on that? Was there anything else from that talk that you took that you were like, oh, this stood out to, or quotes?
No, I mean, it was honestly, man, it was a 6 minute segment of one of his lectures. But I think one of the things that stood out to me is him discussing what personal values are, and at your core, what do you value as a person, and because that does change your, like you had mentioned earlier in the podcast, it was what you value is what you focus on. So something that I've been thinking about over the last day, honestly. But I woke up this morning and I was thinking, like, as a person, I'd say integrity could be a value, or it's probably something that I do value. It would be one of the 10 that you had mentioned. I'm still building out the list in my head, but like integrity definitely came to the top. Possibly humility, adventure, security. So I'm kind of curious to know your thoughts on core values as opposed to, and we don't have to solve anything in this discussion, but it's just something to think about. I'm going to continue thinking about after we're done with this, and maybe we can revisit it in a year or so. But at this moment, that's where my head's at. Just curious to know where your head's at with it.
Gotcha. Integrity. So that's your character. If you lose integrity in your character, then your value decreases a whole bunch. So that makes total sense that you would make sure that you value integrity very highly. And that's probably something that, like you and me in the area that we grew up in, that was preached on so much. It was, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, a whole bunch of don'ts. Don't do this, don't do this. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't don't do drugs, don't go have a bunch of relationships with a bunch of different women. Don't don't decrease your integrity before you even start life. And like a lot of people would look at us and say, we're just starting, because I'm only 25 years old. You're 23. 23.
Yeah.
I nailed it. Sweet. So anyways, so pat myself on the back real quick.
Yeah.
All right. But we're just starting, but a lot of people have already screwed up so much before they even get to their 20s. And a lot of that is because we've forgotten to teach integrity. We've forgotten to teach, the way that our church puts it is purity. They put it as purity, as when you're less affected by a lot of the harmful things in the world, you have a higher value. And that's true. You do. And if you lose that, it takes a while to get it back. And so a lot of people start their lives off rough, and, sometimes just circumstantial. You don't, we both grew up in Christian homes, so we had a lot better of a guide. Some people didn't grow up with that, so they didn't have as good as a guide. And so life's going to be tough, but it's kind of a challenge if you're in that space, and you're in your 20s and maybe you've messed some things up. It's, don't think that you're not valuable. Make sure that you still start to build your value back up, and then make sure that as you're going through life, acknowledge the mistakes that you made and try to make sure that your kids don't make that mistake. That way you break the chain of generations devaluing themselves. You need value, and our name is unrealized purpose. You need value to be able to have purpose, to be able to complete your purpose. And so, but value drives your decision making, which I think is what you were talking about just a minute ago. Is like, your integrity, your strength, your wholeness of a being. It's going to drive your decisions on what you eat, what you put in your body, what you do with other people, the places you go. You're probably not gonna pull up and just park in front of a strip club, even if you were just parking there, because why? Your integrity. It's like your character. How do I want my character to look? And so, but then also backing it, not just with looks, but also backing it with, truth. And so not having a fake facade. So there's just certain things that we're not going to do because you value integrity. And so I'm rambling a little bit. I might have huffed off on some rabbit trails.
Yeah. I did have a thought though, back when you were talking about growing up, and this is something he mentioned in the lecture as well. He said that like the best way to teach or to have value is to live with value. So like you don't have to grow up in a traditional home, husband, wife still there, raising kids, and they're not intentionally sitting down teaching values every day or whatever. He said the best way to, and I believe this too, is to just live it, and then that alone teaches others as well, gives people something to look up to. So I wonder if this could be flipped to where if you don't have someone that you could look up to in your life, like immediately, of course, like family or friends or whatever or something, find someone to look up to and then try to figure out their values and see if it fits with you. Um, and you can find I wonder if you could find role models that way. So I mean, we talk about Jordan Peterson a lot, and I feel like I've probably taken on a lot of his beliefs or realized a lot of his facts, that he teaches, and I've accepted them into who I am. So I think that doing this, if you don't have someone immediate in your life, and do the same. Find someone that you can look up to. And I'm not necessarily saying, oh, you need to go to church and look up to the pastor, but like there are people out there that you can, and I think you can tell when someone's fake, even on social media. So if you were to try to figure out values and to learn more about people, even on social media, I think you can tell people that are fake and people that actually live by a set of rules. And I think I kind of rambled, but like I'm trying to just wrap my head around this and maybe have a takeaway or something. So I don't know. Did any of that make sense, or did I just freaking confuse myself?
No, it makes sense. It just comes back to that value drives your decision making. And so I think maybe a really easy way to put this is think of value and worth kind of as God in your life. Okay, that's what's going to direct your decisions, is what you value. And so when you realize, okay, this is what's valuable to me, this is what's worthy to me, you're going to get the results of what those bring, of what those values and what those worths have to offer. And you can always pick greater values. You can pick greater worths. What makes an item valuable? Well, we can look here on earth and we can go, okay, a roll of paper towels. Well, we know it serves a purpose. Okay, it can't do everything, but it serves a purpose in a particular area. And a lot of things are that way. Some of our values might just serve a purpose in a particular area. So, but somebody gave it value, They didn't make a roll of paper towels and it's foil, I'm not going to sell foil towels. There's no point to that. You can't wipe anything up with foil. It's like it doesn't work. So someone has to create it, give it worth, and then put it out there for whoever or whatever need it may be useful in. And so when we look at ourselves and our character, the one place that I point to grab your values from and to grab your worths from is the Bible. The Bible has a ton of areas, and you may not even be a Christian. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a Christian. And it's like, if you don't want to be a Christian, don't be a Christian. If you don't believe in the God of the Bible, that's, I don't think it's fine, but it may be fine for you, but I do, if you don't believe in the Bible, I still want you to live a good life. I want you to be, joyful. I don't want you to go through life miserable. I don't want anybody to be miserable. But if you base your values and your worths out of the Bible, which is, a lot of people have done for a very long time, and a lot of very wealthy people have biblical values, whether they'll agree to it or not. They have a lot of biblical values, and if you know the Bible and you've read the Bible, then you know that value is there, and they're super successful because of it. And so that's where I would go to get my values and what I'm going to make myself worth. But you can reach, I would say you can reach anywhere to grab a value. It can be as low as, I don't know. I'm working this out in my head as we're talking here. What you perceive to be valuable, you can grab onto that and go, okay, this is what's going to make my decision. Let's say you value, healthy eating. I'm going to eat healthy. So how's that going to direct your decision making? Well, you're not going to go anywhere where you can't eat healthy. You're not going to go to McDonald's. You're not going to go to any fast food restaurants that don't offer healthy food. And so, but if you don't value that, then you'll be going to all of them. So it just depends on what you really put your value on. And I would say, unfortunately, for a lot of people today, they put their value on temporary happiness or temporary joy, and they don't realize that they just want to feel good. And so whatever can make them feel good, they'll go reach after it, and they'll figure out how to get the money to do it, which is crazy.
Yeah. He mentioned that, where it's like if you spend all your time in front of a TV, or trying to chase instant happiness and pleasure, and this is something Jordan Peterson talks about as well. It's like you can't make this you can't make it your value. Happiness can't be a value, I guess, because like when you're just watching TV, it's a distraction essentially from reality. It's you don't know what you value, so you try to find ways to distract yourself. And the best alternative for distraction is something that brings you happiness. Oh, well, that's fun. I'm going to do that, for 4 hours, 7 hours. So I think that really hit me hard, because I was like, when he mentioned that, he's like, that is why people spend so much time doing just really like dopamine hitting things. It's because they don't really have purpose. They don't know what they value in life. So, and I like where you took that with the Bible, Dalton, because it's like you don't have to be a Christian, but there are so many different parts of the Bible that teach you different values to have. I mean, the book of Proverbs literally speaks to young people and definitely inserts a lot of value that you should have as a person into it. And when you're reading, I like to read on a Kindle. You can look up the definition of words instantly on there. So be careful to define things when you're looking through an old book like that. You want to make sure you're not just taking it at face value, like the word humility that we talked about earlier. Yeah, I think that kind of brings it all together for me. Something to think about a lot, though.
Yeah, that I mostly use the Webster's, Noah Webster's, when I read through the Bible. You can pretty much use it for just about, I'd say, 80% of the words. But there's probably 20% of words in the Bible that you have to use a different dictionary. You have to go back to the etymology of the word to really understand it. Because it's an old book, you know. It's so old that it's so old that like literally we argue about what actually the Bible is and what it isn't. You know.
Yeah.
So you gotta do your research. But yeah, you don't have to be a Christian to be I guess successful in the world's eye, or to be happy, or to be joyful. You know, I always prefer people to be Christians. It's great, or more, you know. But yeah, you can find a lot of good values, and there are values even today that, you know, we see. I know we've referred to them before, but the podcast with, you know, like all the OnlyFans girls. It's like, okay, and now they're, you know, not wanting to be OnlyFans more, and they're wanting to have a life, and it's becoming too late, or it's going to become too late for some of them, because they've been spending 30 years or I don't know, 30 years, but they've been spending 10, 12 years of pleasure and gratification at the expense of their character. And I guess that would be a good thing to kind of think about. If you take a year and you don't really value much, or you realize you haven't valued much, it's probably going to take you a year to get back your character and your value. I think it can go right back down to just about everything. You know, the more you eat unhealthy, the same amount of time or more time it's going to be to get back in the ability to eating healthy and to being in shape. And the more and more you ignore knowledge or ignore wisdom, it's going to be the same amount of time that it takes to then gain it. And so it's, you know, you might as well get started now and just build.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Kind of.
But I think a good,
To say a good example of that is my fitness journey, man. I gained 60 pounds in a couple of years of just being unhealthy and living unhealthy. And then it's taken 9 months now to lose all of that and get to where I want to be, you know? So, but that was through, I obsess, man. If I find something, a goal, I'm going to get there. And so, yeah, you're 100% right. Like, you spend so much time lost and not even heading in a direction, just lost, you know, like not a good direction even. And it takes forever to find your way back. And then it takes forever to build your life back the way you want it to be, or the way you want it to be, you know? Like, it took me forever just to get into a habit or a schedule of going to the gym and eating healthy and saying no to food that felt great to eat, you know? And it took forever to change that mental mindset of, oh, I'm stressed out, I'm going to go eat, you know? I'm going to go grab a bag of chips because things are getting a little tough. So it took forever to reframe that for me. I can't imagine people like your example of OnlyFans. Holy crap! Like, that would take forever, I imagine. But I definitely have experienced that very immediately in my life. Yeah, like we had mentioned, I'm only 23, so I don't have a lot of good examples of that. But I feel like, or at least I hope, I'm on the right path. But anyways, man, did you have anything else before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I just did a quick Google search while I was listening to you there. But yeah, the coming back from anything, and I've had mine too, of, and when you're in the Christian side of it, a lot of times you're looked at a lot more harshly than actually the world would look at you. The world's a lot nicer to you when you fail. I would say a lot of times than
Yeah.
than in a church setting or in a Christian setting. So like, I've had my downfall too of like, I screwed up and did something I wasn't supposed to be doing, and started to get addicted, and I got to stop, and then you have to rebuild your character. But I wanted to share just, a few things, simple biblical values that even if you're not a Christian, you're going to hear these and you're going to go, yeah, those are things I want to value. Like, those are what makes a good person. And almost all of these character traits that I'm going to give you are found in your hyper successful people. One is respect. Hyper successful people respect other people. 2 is responsibility. They have responsibilities and they execute them, and they make sure that they're good at that. 3 is self-control. The amount of self-control that like your rich billionaire people have is insane. And these are all biblical values. Honesty. Now, honesty, you get both, because you can be dishonest and succeed at being rich and succeed at being a lot of things, but most of the time it finds you out. So it's better to just be honest. Yeah. Yep. And then compassion. And I know that's hard to think, is like, man, I don't see a lot of rich people that are compassionate. Well, a lot of times compassion goes along with honesty, respect, and responsibility. And, if, you need to have that to be successful. And a lot of your rich people do have compassion, and respect, in some manner or some form. Thankfulness, perseverance. Perseverance is one that you hear all the time talked about. And if you want to be successful, you got to have perseverance. Humility, loyalty. Loyalty is one that all of us look at. We're like, yeah, you got to have loyalty. And the last one is faith in God. Now, for us Christians, it's different, but everybody has a God. And everybody has values, like we were talking about earlier, and it all just depends on what you make your God in your life. Can determine a whole lot. And so if you make your God just seeking after happiness or temporary happiness and pleasures, you're probably not going to have a very wonderful life. But simple things, biblical values right there: respect, responsibility, self-control, honesty, compassion, thankfulness, perseverance, humility, and loyalty. All those are biblical values, and there's a whole load more. And so if, this is my clever way of trying to get somebody that doesn't read the Bible and is not a Christian to open the book and actually read it, because there's really is a lot of information in there. Even if I weren't a Christian and I didn't believe in God, I would be super successful if I just took some of the values out of that book and applied them to life. But that's what I got. That was kind of my last thought.
I like those. Yeah, that's a good way to end, man. I like you said, most people can agree with all of those, and I definitely agree with all of those. So, yeah, I think this has been really good, man. I learned a lot, and I have a lot to think about, and I'm definitely going to re-listen to this one, like, personally, because I think there's a lot of things that I had said and things that you had said that I just I didn't grasp, or maybe I could think about in a different perspective. So I'm going to listen to this one again. But yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for doing the doing the research on this question that I had yesterday. So,
I didn't really do a lot of research, but
right. Well, I mean, you had the notes from doing your lessons.
yes,
So,
over the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, that's everything, man. We can wrap it up.
All right. See y'all in the next video.
Yep.